Welcome back to Murder with the Missus. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy. And today we're going to tell you about Marianne Shockley.
Don't forget to smash that like button. Check out the description for the links of all of our podcast platforms, Cash App, and Buy Me a Coffee. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends. As always, tell your friends because, why should you have all the fun?
Very true.
I mean, you ought to share it.
Don't be
with
selfish.
Everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get to the story. Marianne
Shockley.
Mm-hmm. You said it was going to be a weird one, so let's go ahead and...
It's definitely going to get weird up in here.
Dive into this mess.
Okay. Sadly, people die every day, even holidays and special occasions. So when I first looked into this one, it was a while ago. But when I realized it happened on or around Mother's Day, I decided to hold off until now to do it. So here we are. This happened in Milledgeville, Georgia. And it's a weird story of 3 adults, naked, enjoying a pool and a hot tub. But only one person will survive the night. And the case is going to focus around a relationship between 2 people. Marianne was born August 14th of 1975 and was raised in Morgan County, Georgia. She was a smart lady who got her PhD from the University of Georgia in 2009. And at the time of this case in 2019, she was a UGA etymology professor.
Bugs. Lots of bugs.
Bugs.
She likes bugs.
Her students called her Doc Shock. She liked him a little too much because she even ate the bugs. Yes. There's a video online of her talking about how ants taste like citrus and some green stink bugs taste like cinnamon. Yummy.
Put that on a little toast.
Yes. She was a big believer that bugs could be used as a protein source to solve world hunger. And I could see it. A lot of countries around the world eat bugs for that reason. Now, most people see bugs as an annoyance. They bite people for no reason. They ruin picnics. But Marianne was more of the mindset to just sprinkle the ants on your salad. No harm done.
Probably the one that puts raisins in her potato salad, too.
She's that lady.
If it's raisins.
Is it raisins, though?
Be something else.
Be like, what's
why
the
is
crunch?
These raisins moving?
What's the crunch in here, Marianne? Yes. Lord.
Don't mind them.
Protein.
That's good.
Marianne had been married and divorced and had 2 kids. But we're going to back up a little bit because back in September of 1995, she was 20 years old and a student at UGA. And she met a man named Marcus Lillard. Now, he was 17 years old and had a reputation as a ladies' man. That would continue to be a theme throughout his life. He did say later on that he always had women who were too good for him, and he would take them for granted one after another. Rude.
Just a player. What was his name?
Marcus Lillard.
That's the guy on the left.
He's on the left, yes. In that bottom right-hand picture on the case pic. Yeah. That's him in body cam
So
footage.
if you're watching the video, he's on the left-hand side, right there in the bottom right.
He is. Now, they met because they both worked at the country club over Christmas break, and he came back the following summer only to have to leave again to serve a little time for selling weed. He was definitely living it up, which is another recurring theme that you'll see throughout his life. He did marry and divorce a couple of times, and he had one son named Carson. Carson, as an adult, would say that everywhere Marcus went, there was a woman willing to let him shack up with her. Marcus was described as a peace, love, and drugs kind of dude from everything I could gather. And he had a history of using marijuana, cocaine, acid, mescaline, all the things. All the things. In 2017, Marcus was an on-again, off-again finance person at car dealerships. And he would travel around quite a bit from dealership to dealership. He found himself one day in Athens, Georgia. Now, he used to find nearby friends staying on the Book of Faces, and Marianne popped up. So some 20 years later, they reconnect. And they had just been friends the first time around, but now things were a little bit different. They went to lunch, drove around on his motorcycle, and he took her to the botanical gardens, which was one of her favorite places to go. And I couldn't distinguish if that was like just for fun or if that was for lunch because she ate bugs. So I was like, maybe they went there for a snack. I don't know. They both traveled quite a bit, like I said, him mostly in the States, but her, She was a traveler, but they would hang out anytime they were near each other, in the same place as each other, or they would go to each other's houses if they had time. They did go to a funeral together once, so I guess they were kind of just dating, is what you'd call it.
Probably like friends with benefits.
Probably friends with benefits. And boy, were there benefits for Marcus. She traveled, like I said, for work, so she would take him along as her assistant when she would go out of the country. So she would be in country, like in Arizona, Brooklyn, all around there. But she also went to China, Vancouver, and Ecuador. So she was going to all kinds of exotic places. In January of 2018, they did go on, it was one of their second or third dates, where they had a yoga double date with his friend Clark Hindle. Now, Clark owned the Good Karma Yoga Studio. So a yoga date is kind of right up everybody's alley.
And I'm guessing that Clark's Good Karma Yoga.
Good Karma Yoga Studio.
So Clark is the one on the right.
In that survey,
in that
footage.
picture. In that picture on the
case pic. Yep, that's Clark.
Yep.
Not everyone was too convinced of how good the relationship was between Marianne and Marcus, though. One of her students said that she couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she did not like Marcus. And even Carson had warned Marianne that because of Marcus's love for the white lady, he was like Jekyll and Hyde, saying that he got very angry when he did cocaine. So he was like a completely different person. And this brings us to May 11th of 2019. Now, at the beginning, I said that this happened on or around Mother's Day, and that's because the events of the case start on Saturday the 11th and carry over onto Mother's Day, Sunday the 12th. So it being May, school was out for Marianne, and she was officially on summer break. Her and Marcus go eat, and they do a little drinking. So they're drinking some beers, smoking some pot, drinking some beers. You get the picture.
Summer break in full effect.
Yeah. Whoop, whoop.
Yep.
And
look what I can do.
Exactly. And what's more summer than being in the water, right? So Marcus said that Marianne wanted to swim that day. And so he knew that his yoga buddy Clark had a swimming pool and a hot tub. And that's what you see in the bottom left picture of the case pic. The pool is like in the top right corner, or the hot tub is in the top right corner of the pool. Now. Yep. So it seems that Marcus had met Clark when Clark was treating Carson, his son, as a psychologist. And the two adults just kind of stayed in touch over the years. Carson would later say that Marcus kind of collected people, so he always seemed to have a friend no matter where he went, and Clark was one of those people. Marcus and Carson, at this time, were not speaking, but Marcus and Marianne were leaving for Ecuador again on that coming Thursday, and Marcus wanted to leave him a present before he left, and he knew that if he gave it to Clark, that Clark would give it to him since they're all mutually friends. Now, what was that present? It seems that in the house that Marcus and Carson used to share at one time had a mural on the wall. So on the way to Clark's, Marcus broke into that house and cut that whole piece of the wall completely out. Just the whole wall.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
The things you do for your kids,
yeah,
right?
Just
here, have a wall.
Yeah, vandalize the home.
Yeah, break and enter, vandalism. Now I'll skip ahead to 1:06 a.m. when Clark calls 911 because Marianne is unresponsive. When first responders arrive, all three of them, Marianne, Clark, and Marcus, are all naked.
Wait, what?
They are still naked.
Okay.
Okay. The sheriff said it was a bizarre scene. Marianne is laying on the pool deck, and Marcus and Clark are inappropriately doing CPR when help arrives. Not improperly doing it. They are inappropriately doing it. He explains that Marcus was touching her bathing suit places, top and bottom areas, which I'm pretty sure, I've never been trained in CPR, but I know that's not how you do it.
No.
It doesn't take a genius. The men are pulled away to talk to the cops while EMS can take over and do actual CPR on Marianne. Now, they tell the cops that Marianne and Marcus got there around 7 p.m. They were hanging out. A jam session started with Marcus playing the congas and Clark playing the accordion.
Yeah, you can't call that a jam session.
You don't know?
Accordion? No.
They could have been playing
That's not.
Black Betty.
Black.
Yeah.
No.
Come on.
No.
Okay, fine.
No.
It could happen.
No.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I mean, prove me wrong.
Okay.
If one of y'all can play Black Betty
on the
accordion and the way it's played, you know, the beat, not
naturally.
Classical. Don't make it don't make it sound all fancy.
Don't make it weird.
Make it sound like it. Then, you know, I might call it a jam session, but right now, no, I didn't know damn jam session.
Well, what do you call it then?
Huh?
What are you going to call it
I
then?
call it two morons freaking playing on naked on a pool.
Two super high dudes.
Yeah.
Jamming.
Yeah.
No, you can't say jamming. My bad.
All they was missing was the... that would have been a jam session.
Okay. That's jamming.
Yeah.
Okay.
They would have had that in there, boy. I'm just saying, if they would have had that in there, then it'd been a jam session. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was really about to break it down. I probably look really weird on camera. My bad. If you're watching this, I apologize. Now, they did smoke weed, and they said Clark gave them some ecstasy, so they were feeling pretty good. And then they all got naked and went swimming about 9 o'clock. Clark was swimming in the pool on the shallow end, and Marianne and Marcus got into the hot tub. Now, Marcus decided at that point that they needed more wood for the fire pit, so he went into the woods to get some more.
Naked, though?
As the day he was born. Yes. Now, he said he had to go pretty far into those woods because it was raining. So they were trying to find dry wood, or he was trying to find dry wood. Nobody was with him. He was out there for about 15 minutes, and when he comes back, he finds Marianne in the hot tub, slumped over, mouth and water like up above her nose and her mouth. He gets her out of the hot tub, and they try to do CPR on her, but neither man knows how to do it properly. No shit. We already heard how you're doing
Obviously.
it. I'm shocked. Now, this is his first story, so it's gonna change as they do. He did say that after they did ecstasy, things got a little fuzzy, you think? With Clark being in the shallow end of the pool, he didn't notice that Marianne wasn't visible in the hot tub anymore. So technically, they don't know how long she was underwater. Marianne was put in an ambulance, but sadly, she was declared deceased there at the scene. But in the body cam footage, you can hear the cops talking about how this needs to be treated like a crime scene because things are just not adding up. So they separate the men. And you heard a detective ask Clark, if she's unconscious, y'all didn't think to call 911? And Clark says that it seemed like she was breathing when they pulled her out. And Marcus would say the same thing, that they would blow air in and some would come back out. So they thought that she was breathing. Really? Now, Marcus is in a cop car, and Clark is on his porch. Well, he's supposed to be on his porch. You'll also hear the cop say, I done told him 3 times to stay off that pool. Clark wanted to call his lawyer, so he kept trying to get to his phone that was on the pool deck. But they kept telling him, you can't go over there. That's a crime scene. Because now it's a crime scene.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like a shit show to me.
Oh, yeah. All the monkeys were at this circus for sure. He eventually gets him a babysitter, so that takes care of that. But when that babysitter takes a phone call and walks away, it takes a while with everything going on before they realize Clark is not on the porch anymore. They can't find him. So they knock on the screen door and they call his name a couple of times before they hear a loud but muffled noise from inside the house. They carefully make their way inside, and they find that Clark has had time to write out a 3-page letter and then took his gun and unalived himself in the master bathroom.
So did he write a confession or something?
Clark? One thing it said was, quote, I am very sorry. I don't know what happened with Marianne, but it was on my watch, and I'm so sorry for the family and friends, end quote. There is no admission of guilt. It's pretty much like a will where he says what he wants done with all of his stuff. So that's pretty much what it is. And his life was not without issue. He was, like I mentioned earlier, he used to be a psychologist, if you remember. But he lost his license in 2017. A former patient of his who had a history of drug and alcohol abuse was apparently in a sexual relationship with him, and he was supplying her with drugs and alcohol during their sessions. Now, her husband found out and filed a complaint with the board. And then the patient, a couple months later, came back and filed her own complaint with the board. So he lost his license, which he kind of retired is what they keep calling it. He retired before they revoked his license because he had wanted to retire and open a yoga studio anyways. So he saw this as an opportunity. I'll just throw that out there. He also had a 6-year-old son who passed away from a rare form of cancer, and that understandably devastated him. He was described as being a shell of a man after that. So he started making trips to Peru and hanging out with shamans, and he got back to his old self. But he was also having wild parties at his house every Sunday and doing a lot of drugs. Once the cops find Clark, they whisk Marcus off to the station. They don't want him to see it or even know it happened. Now, it would be a couple hours later that they're interviewing Marcus again at the station, and they tell him what happened to Clark. And he lays on the floor of the interview room, face down, like just kind of wailing. But within 1 minute of hearing the news about Clark, he says, maybe that'll shed some light. So he says there's a high chance, a really high chance, that Clark got into the hot tub with Marianne while he was in the woods.
Well, he turned on Clark pretty quick.
Yeah. He's like, oh, Clark's dead? Then he probably's the one who did it. That's why he killed himself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he would be interviewed several times, as I mentioned, and his story changed several times. One of the things that police noticed right away was that Marianne had a gash on her forehead. So they needed an answer for that. There were a pair of eyeglasses at the shallow end of the pool, where there was also some blood.
Mm-hmm.
In the grass just off the pool deck were 2 more spots of blood next to a woman's silver bracelet. There were a pair of shorts on the porch by the congas and the accordion, where their jam session happened. And there was a whole stack of firewood already cut up, stacked next to the fire pit.
Where he was going to go get some more.
Why? Why would he go get more?
Yeah.
So Marcus either went into the woods to get firewood he didn't need, or another story he told was that he went out there to dig a hole. He was going to go out there and lay in a hole. Then there was either he was out there for either 15 minutes or he blacked out for like 45 minutes, or maybe it was 75 to 90 minutes, or he just doesn't know how long. So every time he tells the story, it changes, and he spends longer and longer out in those woods. And those are all different versions he told the cops. He also either found Marianne, pulled her out of the hot tub, accidentally dropped her, causing the gash on her forehead, and then he did CPR on her. Or he got her out of the hot tub, put her in the pool, swam her to the shallow end, and then pulled her out. But then when he pulled her out, they both fell, and that's what caused the gash on her forehead. And then he started doing CPR. Way different stories. Now, I will say that when the cops got there, she was next to the shallow end of the pool on the pool deck. So somehow she got from all the way at the top of that picture where the hot tub is to all the way at the bottom of the picture where the shallow end of the pool is. It's just, how did she get there? You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he was so high he couldn't carry her.
That's true. So he put her in the pool to kind of move her to the other side.
Maybe.
That's a possibility. But then why not pull her out of the hot tub and do CPR right there? Like, why did it have to be at the other end of the pool?
Weird.
They had also both told police that they thought she was breathing. Remember, it was just shallow. They could barely feel something coming back out. So they thought that she would snap out of it. So one theory was that he maybe threw her in the pool to kind of shock her awake. Like maybe he thought she was passed out.
Yeah, getting in and out of the hot tub to the pool.
Mm-hmm. Kind of shock the system.
I don't know. I mean, it could also...
Yeah, in a bad way.
Put you in a deadly shock.
Exactly. So I think we'll pause right here before we get further into it and hear an ad from today's sponsor.
Yep. Hang on. Is your washer and dryer pushing your buttons instead of the other way around? Make a clean getaway before you spin out of control.
For sheets and giggles, go ahead and call My Laundry Solutions today at 800-535-4411 if you live in an apartment. We know you're pressed for time, so you can also tumble on over to mylaundrysolutions.com, which is available 24/7. They are a wonderful company to do business with.
No credit check, free installations, all for about $1 a day.
That's sensational.
Give them a call. You won't be disappointed. Give them a call today.
I'm like the punniest person on this planet.
Yeah.
I love a dad joke. Now, the CPR, can we talk about that? Because that was questionable. Not just because they were doing it in a perverted way, but this was an issue because the cops wanted to know how long they were doing CPR for. Like basically how long did they wait for her to snap out of it before they actually called for help? Now, when they look at the cell phones, right? So they're like, let's look at their phones. That'll tell us. They get a much better idea. Marcus called his ex-wife, who is a respiratory therapist, around 11:20 p.m., asking her how to do CPR. Now, she cussed him out and told him to call 911. Like, you're being an idiot. If somebody needs CPR, you need to call professionals to come and do it. Now, she called him back about 19 minutes later to see if he had called 911. And when she found out that he didn't, she told him again, you need to call 911. Between Clark and Marcus, they called or texted 5 people and sent 5 messages on the Book of Faces trying to get someone to tell them how to do CPR. His ex was the only person who answered. So they talked to her at 11:20 for the first time, but still didn't call 911 until 1:06 a.m. Bro. So while Marcus is trying to get a hold of people, Clark contributes by going inside and making tea with DMT in it and poured it down her throat.
Oh, wow.
DMT is a better way to say the really long word of what it is, but it's a strong psychedelic drug. So he's basically like, I don't know what he thought that was going to do. He also shook a hydrangea branch over her body in a ritualistic fashion.
So weird.
It's very weird and very sad because they said there were just like hydrangea pieces all around her. And if there was blood in multiple places, right? Because remember, there's blood over next to the concrete area. There's blood in so many different places. So if she got that gash on her forehead after she was taken out of the hot tub, that would mean that she was probably still alive. Like if you have no blood pressure to force the blood out, it just kind of oozes out, I think. I'm not a doctor or anything, but it's not forced out like when you actively cut yourself and bleed. Now, one of Marcus's stories was that if he was in the woods and there was some kind of struggle between Marianne and Clark, that he would have heard that commotion. But then that switched to him saying that Clark had actually drugged them and he went to go into the woods. Marianne begged him not to go, but he went anyways. And he doesn't know what happened next, but he woke up and was looking at his body while he was floating above it. He came back to himself and then went up a slope to head back, and then he heard commotion. So now there's commotion. In one story, no sounds, no nothing. The next story, a commotion. He found Marianne floating in the hot tub and heard Clark's voice, all sinister, say, well, you found her. Now what are you going to do? So his story just keeps getting worse and worse.
If he's naked in the woods.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they be able to, tell?
Yes, they can. Because his legs have briar scratches all over them, and they said his feet look like he had been standing on an anthill. So he definitely had damage from being out in those woods. So do with that what you will. Some people say that he went out to the woods to maybe bury her, but then realized he couldn't because they'd find her anyways, And he snapped out of it and was like, no, we need to call 911. And that's why they waited almost 2 hours before they called for help. Anyways, that's all speculation. Now, he had quite a bit of time on paper for that 2015 distribution charge. So they arrested him and hold him on that. Monday morning, because remember, this literally happened early Sunday. But Monday morning, they had a preliminary autopsy result in, and it showed a cause of death.
So I bet it wasn't drowning.
It was not drowning. It was murder by strangulation.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So by 3 p.m. on Monday afternoon, Marcus is charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, involuntary manslaughter, and reckless conduct. Well, that would be his official charges when he went to trial. He was charged with something else, and then they swapped out a couple. Anyways, also, the sheriff had gotten a call that day from a woman saying that Marianne did not drown, that she had been strangled by Marcus. Now, this call came before her cause of death had been made public. So it was somebody, actually Marcus's ex, that saw this on the news and was like, oh, Marcus is involved? She definitely didn't drown. He did it. Because she said that he liked to choke her during sex. He was like, this is his thing. This is what Marcus does. He did it to her once, and she actually lost consciousness. And so he quit doing it. Marcus does admit that he tried that with Marianne once, and she didn't like it. So he stopped, and he never did it again. And there would be many more women come out about choking stories with Marcus.
Right.
Yes, this, like I said, this was his thing. And they actually testified against him at trial. We also heard in trial that Marianne had busted blood vessels in her eyes, multiple soft neck tissue hemorrhages, and they did say that her hyoid bone was intact. But most people who are into autoerotic asphyxiation will tell you that it's about the carotid arteries on the side of the neck and not the front of the neck. So if this was some sex thing gone wrong, they're saying that it wouldn't have broken that hyoid bone anyways. Now, she did have a 1.2-inch facial laceration. That was the gash on her forehead, along with a bunch of abrasions and contusions of her face, neck, torso, and extremities. So what that did was led to a bunch more towards that speculation of them trying to get her out into the woods to bury her, but then they couldn't. So that kind of leads towards that as well. So they say that she had a lot of bruising also below the waist that was consistent with squeezing or grabbing.
So there's more to the story.
There is definitely more to this story. But shit, the only person left to tell it was high as balls when it happened. And his story keeps changing. Or he's lying his ass off. So what do you do? Like, you're not going to get a straight answer. Now, that hyoid bone being intact leads the defense to question the ME on the stand and get her to admit that maybe the person who strangled her just wasn't strong enough to break that bone. You know, maybe like 69-year-old Clark. They did do a sexual assault exam on Marianne, and only her DNA was found. So they don't believe that there was actually any sexual activity with her that night. Or that the water could have washed any other DNA evidence away. Right? Because she's been in 2 bodies of water now. Now, she had DNA under her fingernails on both hands. But this part didn't come into trial. They didn't bring that up. The left hand had Marianne's DNA under the fingernails, along with a complex DNA of another person. Same with the right hand. They did an oral swab on her, and they got her DNA, of course, along with Marcus, which he had said that they had only kissed that night and didn't go any further. But there was also DNA of an unknown male in the oral swab. Now, when it comes back like that, when they call it a complex sample, it's not like you see on TV. They can't just like pop it into CODIS and get a hit. They have to actually collect DNA from somebody, and then they can compare that sample to what they have off of Marianne's body and see if they're a match that way. That's the only way to do it.
So it wasn't Clark or Marcus?
It was neither Clark nor Marcus.
someone else was there.
Was there?
I mean, was there?
How else would she get their DNA in her mouth?
I know, right?
Right? So according to the DNA, yeah, somebody else was there. Maybe. Because, I mean, unless she made out with somebody before they got there, I don't know. But according to Marcus and Clark, they were the only three at that house all night. But even though Marcus's DNA seems to have only been found in her mouth, the state keeps pushing that given Marcus's kink for choking, that this was a sex act gone wrong. Like, that's their whole case. Marcus has maintained that he did not do this. They were in love, and they're like, well, you were cheating on her because you were seeing all these other women. And he said that she told him he could do whatever he wanted when she was out of town. So he was making it seem like they were in an open relationship, but her friends were like, absolutely not. She would not have stood for that. So I don't know. But then all those women that came forward saying he was an asshole, and because he really was, if you hear some of the ways he treated these people, including his own son, a lot of them were like, he's not a good person. He might personify himself as this peace, love, hippie dude, but he's definitely not. And he's like, oh, they're just mad at me. That's why they're up here testifying. Okay. Now, as soon as Carson heard about Marianne, he said he knew his dad had something to do with it. But in trial, the defense attorney also talked about the fact that Marianne was drunk. She had high levels of MDMA in her system, and the autopsy even came back showing that she had an enlarged heart. There was also marijuana in her system, and the hot tub was 107 degrees, which is over what it's supposed to be. So he was saying that all of that put together meant that she had a sudden cardiac death, that's what did it.
Oh, and then somebody strangles her.
And then somebody apparently strangled her.
Don't forget about that. I mean, yeah.
Right. So they say she was not strangled because remember the hyoid bone's intact, but okay, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Now,
I mean, hell, I've been in a hot tub before and came out damn near had a heat stroke from it.
Same here, but that's the pots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the old pots.
It's the old pots.
It's the old pots.
Right. So his defense is like, it was all an accident. Nobody did anything to her. It just happened. It was natural. You know, her heart just couldn't take it. And I don't know exactly what did it, but the jury deliberated for 35 minutes before they said not guilty across the board.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
Yeah. Defense in closing arguments said that he didn't call 911 right away because he was on probation. And that's a probation violation that he's out there doing drugs and hanging out. And that's something that the judge talks about too. She said she came to a much different conclusion than the jury did. That it was clear to the court that the only person that Marcus was concerned about that night was himself. Now she kept him on that probation violation and sent him to prison for that instead. His release date is not until October of 2030. So he's getting a little time. Marcus is convinced that Clark set him up from the get-go. When talking about the note that he left, Marcus said, quote, "The devil was at work. I mean, everything that he could have possibly done to line this thing up to make it confusing and deceitful, it's all there," end quote. Marianne's kids did file a wrongful death suit against Clark's estate, and it was settled for $500,000. And I still have so many questions.
Shit, me too.
Yeah. I will mention one other thing that was kind of interesting. There was a jailhouse informant that said that Marcus had told him that he felt bad about cheating on Marianne all those times. So he figured that if she could just have sex with someone else, that he would feel better. And he knew that Clark would try something if they went over there and got high. So that's a whole new scenario to consider. But informants, you know what I mean? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And that's all for this one.
Yeah.
Got any final thoughts?
No, I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean.
Told you it was weird.
It's just weird because they was high.
Very.
So there's really not going to be a clear story.
No.
And as he's remembering it, he's going to remember it different.
Right.
Every damn time. Something's going to pop up that's going to be a little bit different than what he thought it was.
Well, what happens is they say something to him like, you know, what about this? And he's like, oh, then it was probably this.
Yeah.
It sparks a memory for him, if that makes sense.
Exactly. But by the time you get, well, it was probably this, then it makes him look like he's just a storyteller. You know, he just sits there and lies all the damn time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't do it, but I mean, it's one of them things. I mean, it's like it's really hard to say.
It's really hard to say.
But then you got old Clark. I mean, you know, goes in the house and
hurts himself.
Does that to himself, and then, you know, it kind of, that looks a little suspicious.
Now, I do want to throw out something about Clark. His thesis, I can't remember, I should have wrote this down. He wrote his thesis about something in rock and roll. I can't remember what it was, and it still, to this day, as far as I can tell, is still hanging in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was they keep calling him a prestigious member of society. So he was in high regard, apparently.
With his accordion.
All right.
His jam sessions with his accordion.
Yeah. Yeah, he liked to jam. His Black Betty. If you like our content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you get a notification whenever a new episode drops or anytime we go live. If you have any case suggestions, you can send them over to dnday.truecrime@gmail.com.
And as always, don't forget to tell your friends, because they need to see us too, just like you do. Don't keep us away from your friends.
Yeah, we're great.
But as always, thank you guys for likes, shares, subscribes, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.